1, 2, 3. Welcome to Muay Thai Bones.
Do not attempt to adjust your television set. Sylvie's driving. It's not backwards. We're backwards.
We're just coming off of 2 fights for Sylvie, 260 and 261. We were up in Chiang Mai fighting at Loy Crow Ring on Friday. And then we took a day of rest and shot down 10 and a half hours to Hua Hin to fight 261 against a fighter we had never heard of. Just like, it is amazing how the depth of talent in Thailand. Like, we are very connected to the female fight pool on the Thai side. And like, we don't know who you are. Damn, you are skilled and experienced.
Where have you been?
It's really incredible.
Who are you?
It's really incredible.
Yeah, that's cool.
It reminded me a little bit like we had never heard of Nong Bu, and the next thing we know, she's fighting for a world title and fucking ripping it up through Thailand.
Yeah.
There's just an endless pool of female talent all over the country. It's really cool. So if you're new to the Bones, this is probably going to be a shorter one. We usually go to it for like an epic 3 hours at least. This will probably be a shorter one. We have a shorter trip, and we basically just drive in the car. Sylvie mostly coming from fights, driving back home to Pattaya where we live, and we just talk all things Muay Thai. These are conversations we would normally have in the car. We just share it with you.
I think I cuss less on the actual podcast.
You can cuss on the podcast.
I have a
This
sailor
is
mouth.
full on Joe Rogan style. So if you're watching us on YouTube, you can become a patron supporter of Sylvie. You support all her content. You support these podcasts.
Support me as a fighter.
And you make all her crazy historic fighting possible. Well, go ahead.
And when you're a patron, you can subscribe to this as an audio podcast.
Exactly. So you can listen to us with your little earbuds.
You can take one out and only hear me.
No, we changed that. Okay. Yeah, people were complaining about that. Oh man. Okay, so you can become a patron and get the audio podcast. I was about to say though that supporting Sylvie's fighting is like, when it's all said and done, it's going to be monumental what you've accomplished in the ring, not to mention what you shared. So you can be a part of that as a patron. For every patron gets the podcast though, even in $1. It's really the best content on the internet, in our humble opinion, right?
Yeah. I mean, not only do we do all kinds of content like Muay Thai Bones, interviews with legends, and my fights and articles and things like this, but a huge portion of it is the Muay Thai library, which you get access to, which is preserving the legacy of technique and the legends of Muay Thai in Thailand. It is truly like a library, in that you don't finish the library.
Yeah, it is endless archive, and we grow at 2 videos a month. We're getting close to our first goal of 100 hours. I think we're gonna have to go for 200 hours. It's okay. Enough about that. We're gonna dive right into the first topic. You're gonna see from our topic how the Muay Thai Bones conversation format is different than pretty much any fighting podcast you're going to run into. We're audio listening. What is that? How you call it?
Audio listening?
I don't know. Audio reading? What do you call that? Audible?
We're listening to an audiobook.
An audiobook on Audible. Mostly when we drive. I think it's only when we drive.
So far, yeah.
Yeah, and we found the author on a Joe Rogan interview. We'll probably link that in the description. But he wrote a historical account of something that has not been like covered thoroughly in history, which is about the history of the Comanche people in the Texas frontier, and basically this endless war between Texas this very brutal, constant battle and war between the Comanche people and
Settlers.
The settlers of Texas, right around leading up to the American Civil War. We wanted, I don't know, I was very impacted by this book. It is full of just details, telling of the story with some beautiful descriptions, but mostly it's just raiding party after raiding party, historical accounts, diary entries, descriptions from newspapers, kind of woven together to bring the picture of what was happening in this part of America, in American history, which is largely untold. We don't want to do a review of the book. It's about, we're starting this out as, this book made me think about things about Muay Thai that are still resonating with me, so much so that I'm like, Sylvie, let's just start off with this. I'm really excited about it. But I don't want to just like run roughshod over the whole podcast with my excitement. How do we go about this?
It's not a book review, but you failed to mention that it's basically this kind of endless story of brutality and the cruelty and extent of violence on both sides, but largely the Comanche.
It is both sides.
It is both sides.
Both sides.
But
yeah.
fuck are the Comanche scary. Is just like, it's, for me, it's hard to listen to when we're driving. It's like, it's kind of this like, I'm always like wincing as it's going, even though it's very, very interesting.
Well, we should just say, in the tales of this, the Comanche were kind of nomadic people, a raiding culture. It developed over time, but for hundreds of years, before the encountering of the white people, this is how the Comanche lived before that. It was just tribe against tribe, Indian against Indian.
Yeah.
And what's so startling about the story is the degree to which the torture of your captors was just normal.
Yeah.
Like, you raided, captured, enslaved the young, and whoever else you captured, you tortured in a horrible way.
Yeah, there's no like, let's make this quick and just kill them and move on. It was like, the point was to be
the torture was
hardcore.
Part of the culture.
Yeah.
And if you were captured, you expected to be tortured.
Yeah, because people had survived or gotten away or whatever, and so you heard, like, you knew what was going to happen.
100%.
Yeah.
And I don't know, there's this, the intense proliferation of brutality that's woven into a culture, and the author makes the point, he frames it as, this is basically a Stone Age culture that grew up, that organized itself around warfare.
Yeah, and it's not accidental. Like, you're raised to be that way. Like, this is what the boys of the Comanche were, like, you're good if you practice this kind of brutality and cruelty. Although they defended themselves. Like, if you kill one of us, we totally kill one of you. Like, it's not a, we were wondering about this, of how violent they were to each other, but it seems like they're very supportive of the group.
I mean, within the group?
Within the group, yeah.
So, okay, so the parallels I was drawing, the author kind of paints this fantasy image of the Comanche, which it feels a little bit like part of the romantic image that caused him to write the book. He's not just a pure historian, also he's captured by this imagination of these Stone Age people who basically all the males did was train to ride horses, train for warfare, and play. Like, it was a culture of warfare, really.
Yeah.
And it was just natural for them as boys to just learn to shoot a bow. They were unbelievably adept on the horse. That he goes well into detail about their nature. The nature of their warfare tactics were such that white people had never seen anyone firing from a horse.
And it made it like not even a fair fight. Like, you've got these Comanche who can split the first arrow with the second arrow while riding the horse.
Yeah.
And then you've got these white people who have to get off the horse
to
take
horse,
a minute
march.
to put the gunpowder that they measured
Yeah.
and like pack the... It's not the same thing at all.
And so this romantic picture of this unfair warfare raised from childhood to kind of like relish this quality, it could not help but touch for me the romantic picture of the Thai boys raised in Thai camps, fighting since they're 6 years old or 10 years old or 12 years old in Muay Thai, a fighting lifestyle. And then when they get to age 19 and they fight a Westerner, it's like there's no comparison. It seems that the culture of fighting, it maps on in this very strange way, even though Khmer Muay Thai, Thailand's Muay Thai is definitely in a different non-Stone Age framework, but Thailand's Muay Thai really grows out of Isan, agricultural, like a different culture than many of the fighting traditions of the world. Like most fighting traditions seem to like grow out of more urban contexts, right? And there's something about Muay Thai in Thailand that seems to go back into a lifestyle, a village lifestyle. And I've written about this also, how time in Muay Thai, like even the notion of time in the scoring of Muay Thai in Thailand, evokes kind of like agrarian concepts of cyclical time and storytelling. And even you get
There's like fighting seasons.
fighting seasons, like there's festival seasons in Thailand are kind of like fighting seasons, and there's been theorization that fighting festival seasons and fighting seasons were organized around when harvest was, and that villages or territories would war with each other in season. Just like now there's festival season for fighting around the harvest. There used to be, that was the Southeast Asian war season. And that fighting was part of the fabric of life, really. And that there's some element of that in Thailand's Muay Thai that is romantic and beautiful, but also real. Did you feel those connections at all when they were in the descriptions of the Comanche? Like,
not at all. I can see it in you talking about it, but when we were listening to it, I was not making connections.
You're not making the connections? I don't know, the way he described how Comanches fought like nobody else on the planet, that they had mastered the Spanish horse. They were shooting arrows like basically like machine gun fire, like the arrows held between their fingers and just like unleashing them under the horse's neck. It just reminded me of the like control over the fighting space that you get in Thailand, because the boys are fighting from such an early age and gain so much experience as their like emotional development is also coming as an adult, like into adulthood.
Yeah.
So that was one connection I felt in the book. What you felt another one about? You were mentioning to me about Lakhin and stuff.
Well, I did not in my brain make connections to Muay Thai while listening to the book at all.
Okay.
But because you made the comparison, I was like, well, let me think about that. Like, what is the comparison that I see? Is that Muay Thai is called the most violent sport because it allows elbows and things like this. And, it's interesting because in our last Muay Thai Bones podcast, we talked about fighting with metta, like fighting with compassion. And that feels very in contrast to what is also very true about Muay Thai, which is that it is incredibly violent. And it's like, there is a ending the fight through pain or humiliation or whatever the thing is to like shut someone down. And so you've brought this up in other contexts before when you talk about torture in like the Middle Ages.
Oh, yeah.
You're like, people were harder back then. Like, it sounds so unbelievable for us when we're like, someone was put on the wheel or whatever.
This
like,
is talking about like the Inquisition, the Spanish Inquisition, and that torture was so awful.
It's so awful to hear about, and you're like, who even thinks of that? But the life was so hard and bodies were so hard that it's actually not the way it would be if you did that to someone now.
Well, that was my theory, is that when you tortured somebody, not that torture is ever good, but when you torture somebody in the Middle Ages, you're torturing somebody who's a fucking hard person. They live a very hard life. And that they're like, they have that kind of, when you touch a farmer's hand, it's fucking made of stone.
Yeah.
Like, the lives, the endurance, and the thresholds for pain that people went through all day long were just like, it's not like grabbing somebody out of a Starbucks cafe.
And so there's this part in the book where they've taken a young girl captive and do horrible things to her. They cut her nose off, like she's
man, it's pretty intense.
She survives, and they do horrid things to her, and they bring her with them when they like come in contact with the settlers again to show her.
They were going to do a peace negotiation or something. There was a kind of it was an act of good faith to bring her, right? It was like, look how I don't know. It was a kind of like
intense.
But how do you describe what that was?
I don't know. We didn't kill her. Like, look at this.
The Comanche had no idea that the horrific appearance of this girl, she was a white girl, would shock everyone. Like, they brought her along like an act of good faith.
Because for us, this is normal, right? So it's like, what? This isn't that bad. What are you talking about, kind of thing. So in that moment in the book, what I thought of in connection to Muay Thai is that there's a desensitivity, or there's like a normality, or whatever the thing is, that like a lot of times what makes the fighters in Muay Thai so incredible is not the like turn of their foot technique. It's that they've been fucking bashed since they were 8. And they are just so hard that they'll like, you cannot make them quit.
Yeah.
And something that is being lost in Muay Thai is that a lot of these fighters don't train the way they used to, and so they are softer. And when I see fights or clips of fights or whatever of like Desensitization or Lakhin or Samson getting fucking smashed, and you're like, these guys
golden age fights.
You're like, these guys were just so hard.
Like even the one who's losing.
Like, how are you not knocked out by that?
Yeah.
That, I can't remember the fighter's name. There's a guy who has a hard to remember name who fought Kaensak, and he's almost knocked out for all 5 rounds, and he keeps going. And you're like, how is he doing that? That to me is what was happening in that Comanche situation, where they're like, what's your problem? This is not that bad. Like, we're used to such violence that this is like mild.
Oh man.
Is that I was talking about Lakhin. You mentioned my mention of Lakhin.
It was in the Muay Thai library.
When
we
I
did a session with him.
Training with him for the session, he was talking about how all his time in the gym was spent figuring out, how do I hurt you? And the thing is, there are things that hurt everybody, but there's also, how do I hurt you, which you figure out in the ring at that moment.
Yeah.
But they're all warning shots until the person doesn't back down. Samson didn't back down. Lakhin is knocked Samson down for a count, and Samson got back up, and Lakhin was a little bit like, fuck, what do I do with that? Is that when I see the like Desensitization fucking shredding someone in front of him, and you're like, God, he's so intense. That's what I'm looking at with my context. Whatever Desensitization thinks is intense is something I can't even imagine. So those people seeing that woman with her cut off nose, and they're like, what's your problem? You try to fucking imagine what they think would be intense, right?
Oh,
you're like, I kind of don't even want,
by comparison,
I don't even want to know what they would think this is bad.
I guess what you're saying, what you're invoking, is that there's a level of brutality and desensitizing. What is the
Desensitization.
word? Desensitization. That lets one know that the thresholds are far above what is something we'd even imagine.
You don't even have to see the extent of it. It's that same thing of like, Muay Thai is not technically the most violent sport, but the exposure to toughness is higher than the like, I learned these kata and practiced them under controlled circumstances in shows in my mall karate class. Like, you put two people in a real fight with those two different contexts.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if that Muay Thai fighter actually has any real skill. The hardness.
Well, that's actually what. And rolling. Next topic on the Muay Thai bones. Oh, I just love this kind of series we're doing, and people are responding to it in a really good way. There's really nothing like this in any kind of discussion that I've seen.
Yeah, people have asked for more of this almost more than any other topic.
Totally. What we do every session is we basically, Sylvie is a practicing Buddhist, and what she's done is been able to identify like Buddhistic principles found in Muay Thai, but that aren't explicit in Muay Thai. It's basically, the Muay Thai of Thailand has basically grown out of a Buddhistic culture and expresses these values. And so as we talk about these principles, they help you maybe understand Buddhism if you're coming to it from a Muay Thai perspective, but also help you understand aspects of Muay Thai that are really different than other traditions of fighting.
Yeah, which I think is actually really important for being able to see, like to view Muay Thai in a way that helps you understand. Like, sometimes when I'm watching Muay Thai that's not in Thailand, and people are asking me like, what did you think of this fight or that fight? I'm like, I literally don't know what I'm looking at. Like, I don't know how this is supposed
like a
to
language.
be viewed. It's like, when I watch American football, I'm like, I don't even know how they score, other than like getting to the end zone. So it's
slamming the ball on the ground.
Yay! Like, I don't know. So it's I think that when you look at what values are expressed in the culture, and so they're valued in the sport, it helps you see it. Like, it helps you watch it. You're like, I get this.
And it helps you enjoy it the more you understand.
And perform it if you're a fighter.
And perform it. And one of the more, was Roop the last one we did?
Was it?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
What do you think our last one was?
Maybe it was Roop.
Okay, well, my point is
no, it was metta. It was
dropping
compassion.
metta. Oh, yeah. That was actually a very good one. So we've done metta, which is compassion. What was the endurance one?
Oton.
Say again. Oton, which is a kind of like the ability to endure, right? Suffering. And ning is something we've talked about, which is kind of like ease of movement, lack of.
It's like unperturbed, like unmoved by what's happening. It's being very equanimity. Maybe?
So this one, take it away, baby. Because I'm not a practicing
Kevin
Buddhist.
can't
I think about these things. I think about them. I love to hear about them, actually. I'm learning as much as you guys. Right at the fork in 400 meters.
One of my favorite things about Muay Thai and Buddhism, is that not only are there usually multiple meanings, or like you can use two words for whatever one word it is in Thai, but it also kind of it's always a little bit more than one thing. So ning, for example, means this like stillness thing, but there are other words in Thai that also mean that, like choy means like to remain still, unmoved kind of thing. I love that there's like more than one. But so what we're talking about is samadhi. Samadhi means both concentration, but it also means intention. So as a Buddhist, when you're practicing Buddhism, it's really important to have samadhi, because you have to have the right degree of focus to be able to keep your mind still or kind of be in the moment, but you can't be overly focused because then you're straining. So there's this like baby bear of samadhi, but it's so important to have that.
So if it's a beam of light, you don't want it to be like washed out wide, or you don't want it to be a laser.
You don't want to kill anything.
You want to kind of like a soft focus in a direction or
which
intention.
Is brilliant for Muay Thai, Because if you are overly focused, you have fucking tunnel vision and you can't respond to anything. You're just like, I'm gonna kick, and then you don't because you're like tunnel vision. And if you lack concentration, you're like, I don't know what just happened. I got jabbed 90 times and didn't realize she was southpaw. It totally is like this like perfect focus kind of thing where it's like too close, you don't know what you're looking at, and too far away, you can't actually see it. So that's what the right concentration is. But because it also means intention, there's this other element that to me is so close to Yod Muay Thai. Because
Yod Muay
it's
being
been said to me.
Elite Muay Thai.
Because it's
level.
been said to me by so many Yod Muay. And they actually don't use the word Samadhi. Pinu's the first one who ever used that word.
Oh, he actually used it in a Muay Thai context.
He wrote it to me when I was getting ready to go fight. He said, have Samadhi, like have focus and concentration in your fight. But the intention part of it, for example, Karahat likes to use the word sure. And what he means is when you fire your shot, be sure of it. Don't like, and maybe it's a kick, like kind of pull it kind of thing. That's a lack of concentration and commitment to like kick but pull it because you're afraid it's going to get caught.
And it's a lack of intention.
It's a lack of intention.
Yeah.
So it's like you may be slow, they may hit you 4 times and you hit back once, but if you're like, I have intention to hurt you, you see that intention. You can see it in really good Muay Thai fighters where it's like that one was focused and the other one was blurred.
I think that's the interesting thing, is that what you're talking about is a mental state, but it's expressed.
It manifests
physically.
Yeah.
So that when this is what is so beautiful, especially about Golden Age Muay Thai, but just for us, huge fans of Thailand's Muay Thai, as opposed to competent fighting all over the world that uses Thai techniques and whatnot, is that there's this subtle degree of focus that is being expressed that is so beautiful. And we often describe it like people talk about the technique of Thais, but it's really about this baby bear of mental focus that they're able to achieve somehow and express. And if one fighter has it and one fighter doesn't, that's why adding up damage points is so far apart from what Thailand's Muay Thai is about. If one fighter has it and one fighter doesn't, there's almost like you can't even compare the two.
Yeah. You see this with how shapes are being fight, like who's in charge of what's happening in the fight.
How fights are being shaped?
Yeah. Like last night, my fight, my opponent threw a lot. She threw way more strikes than I did altogether. But her intention clearly was to get me off of her and hurt me. But each strike did not hold the seed of that intention. Instead, it was like, get off, get off, get off. I threw far fewer strikes, but the ones that I threw that had impact, that were like, that was a big fish versus 10 little fish, that's also this samadhi, this like intention kind of thing. And Yodkunpan and Krunu have been talking about the importance of this with knees, where like when you come in, if you're just throwing knee sloppily, like just kind of mua is what they call it in Thai, where it's just this like mess, is like, there's no intention in that. It's just this kind of like, I'm going to say as many words as I can.
word.
Versus like, wow, that was a concise statement that I know what you meant by that, and I kind of don't have an answer to it kind of thing. And so it's like you can let your opponent throw a few things at you and time your throw or your like deep straight knee or like whatever this thing is, and the like focus and intention samadhi of that like timed intended strike totally blows the like number of strikes out.
How do you train samadhi as in Muay Thai? Like you talked about being too focused. I think Westerners who are kind of like charmed by the technique so technical of Thailand's Muay Thai, trying to get the kick right or all the body parts moving, you're really training this this laser focus, right? Mm-hmm. Which often is accompanied by a audio script in your head of criticism.
Right.
How do you train the light beam to not be so focused? Because that's almost worse than it being too fuzzed out.
Well, you have to have proper concentration in your own mind. You cannot be overthinking. You can kind of never look for an opening. You just have to see the opening, which sounds very zen,
yeah. Do not
grasshopper,
yeah.
whatever. But it's true. If you're looking for the knockout, you will never knock anyone out. It's like how Chai is if you're throwing with 100% power, you're never going to hit anybody. You have to pull it down to this calm concentration that's this sweet spot for being in the moment of being able to engage with, but also interact with and respond to the conversation of a fight.
I think pulling down power is a very interesting component of that, because almost when you're slamming 100%, you're too focused.
Yeah.
You're not connected to other things, almost.
Or if you're trying to do a 16 chain combination, you're too vague, you're too blown out, you're not thinking. You can be how do I get my right hand on your face? And that might involve 2 steps beforehand, and you use those 2 steps to get there.
You don't think that's too focused?
No, because
how do I get my right hand on your face?
It's how Dieselnoy was Samart kept dodging my knees. He kept slipping them. So he's so instead of trying to hit him with this one, I'd throw this one in order to get him when he moved there. That's throw the ball where the guy's going to be, rather than where you see him right now. They're very simple changes in the mind, but it's not easy to get there. It's the same thing of not having a tight mind, not being clenched in the mind. You're yeah, I kind of know what that means, but how do you get there?
Well, what do you tell me your experience, because one would assume that meditation, and you practice Vipassana meditation, what meditation does is it makes you more familiar with the right focus.
Yeah, it's a constant.
You become familiar with, that's the sweet spot, and then you keep falling out of it.
Yeah.
And getting back on the rope and falling. That's a lot of what meditation is, the Vipassana meditation is.
It's basically fine-tuning your awareness.
Yeah, so if you're trying to bring the right intention and focus in training, it probably helps for you to familiarize with what even the right focus is.
Yeah.
To wear some kind of mental groove there.
Yes.
So that when you're under more duress and you're trying to learn things and they're pulling on you, there is a groove to fall into.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just making shit up as you go.
Yeah, and it is trial and error, but you have to have the degree of awareness, which I don't think is actually a very high degree of awareness. It's just knowing the difference between this and that. In order to keep calibrating where that sweet spot is. If you're on a treadmill and you set it to a number, if you run too fast, you're hitting the front of the treadmill, and if you run too slow, you're going to fall off. That's not I have years of awareness training to be able to know that I'm not running at the correct pace.
Yeah.
Right? You can get that pace pretty quickly by 0.8 seconds of trial and error to get your feet going the right way. That's the kind of calibration you need to get started. And then you just get more and more used to being aware all the time instead of aware only when something really big happens.
That's actually something that really good pad men and Pinus like this too. It feels like they're not just working techniques or training you to fight, but they're really like that treadmill making you feel a sweet spot of effort, focus, intention, and use fatigue to kind of soften you and shape you. But they're really almost training a mental presence over time.
Yeah.
Right? Are you worried about something?
No, it's like how a tired dog is an obedient dog.
20 kilometers.
Okay.
Oh wait, something had just changed.
Meters.
Whoa.
Keep left at the fork.
That was weird. Okay, it's want us to go left, baby.
Okay.
Like,
But after this, right?
But immediately.
Okay. Like there's an exit.
There's some kind of exit to Rama 9.
Oh, that was there. That was before.
Okay, then we've lost it. It's okay. Maybe it doesn't know where we are.
Okay.
Oh, it didn't know where we are.
Okay.
We're back to where we were.
The machine had wrong concentration.
Yeah. Another technique that might be related to Samadhi was when we introduced the Long Swan 1000, which was, we're going to pay this toll and be right there. Hold on, I need to hear this.
Okay.
Which was this golden age Muay Cow training that Long Swan, one of the Yod Muay of the golden age, taught Sylvie, which was basically 1,000 knees and 1,000 teeps on the bag every day.
Every session.
Every session. So Sylvie was doing 2,000 of each. And the part of the thing was to break away from like the perfect technique that is often a part of bag work, and to really just submit yourself to incredible fatigue, and also let the body find the patterns, the natural patterns of having to do something for so long, right? And I feel like that worked by pushing yourself into such high numbers. The mind has to relax to a certain degree.
Yeah, it's like, and that's not the only way to do it.
No.
Like by doing 1,000 of them, you're not going to do 1,000 perfect knees or perfect teeps. It's not possible.
Yeah.
Hippy had me do 20 really hard kicks, and he's like, also don't care about the form, just make them hard. Like each one has to be really hard.
Yeah.
And then there are people who are like, do 10 perfect kicks.
Yeah.
So you adjust the numbers based on what you're trying to get out of it. But if you try to do all of those at once, that is not Samadhi. Like that's monkey mind. You can't do that many things all at once.
Yeah.
But by playing with those levels, you do find good technique, power, speed, timing, and volume. Like eventually it all kind of bakes together.
And then that is basically Yod Muay Thai, is having that presence of mind in fights under duress. And there must be a satisfaction of being able to fight like that.
Yeah, but I have in my head this like collapsed thing of being chastised by Quanah and being chastised by Karahat in the same way of being sure. Sometimes Pinu will like pop his leg up to like feint a block while he's holding a kick for me, and my kick falls apart because I'm startled by seeing the block coming up, and so I pull my kick, and he's always like, no. He's like, you don't care. If they block, you don't care. You kick exactly the same, whether they catch it, they block it, they don't block it, whatever. You kick, that's your Samadhi. He doesn't say that, but that's what he means.
Yeah.
Karahat, when he's like, throw the kick, be sure. He's like, he doesn't care whether it misses, whether they block, whether they catch it, whatever. You're sure. Like, you throw it. And most of the time, you're right. Like, it's going to land because you throw it with that, like...
But even if it
I'm sure
doesn't land, you've created this aesthetic impression on the fight so that when it lands 2 minutes later, it's called back in a weird way.
It's got this, like, it has this aesthetic to it, too. The Samadhi, the aesthetic Samadhi of Muay Thai is so important for Thai scoring of, like, was that effective or not?
Right.
And it reminds me of the first time we saw an elephant and the Mahao telling us how to approach an elephant. They're like, when you decide to go, you go. You cannot chicken out halfway.
You don't creep on the elephant.
To an elephant, it's gonna fucking stop you.
You walk confidently, right?
Because your attitude is sensed by the elephant. And if you're not sure, it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I'm not
kind
sure.
Of thing.
Yeah.
If you, to give a very mundane example in case people are never going to stand in front of an elephant and be like, approach the elephant. If you're getting tattooed or getting your hair cut, and the person tattooing you or getting your haircut is kind of like, you're like, could you just get away from me? Like, this is not good. Even if they fuck up, even if they cut it a little bit too short or they like blow a line or something, if they have this confidence that they're like, okay, we just go back and fix that, that's a samadhi and that's a be sure. And you're like, okay, like I'm comforted by your confidence kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like
That's
that.
pretty awesome. Okay, on to the next one. Okay, rolling. Thanks for being with us on our trip back to Pattaya from Hua Hin. Next topic. I had this analogy that came to me and I posted it on Facebook, on your Facebook page, trying to explain why backwards fighting, which Thais are well known for. It's not only what they do, but it's how scoring is done in classical Muay Thai. That why Thais have such a hard time adapting to these kind of hybrid shows that you now see in Thailand, like Max Muay Thai. You also get it in Super Champ and what's the hardcore? Max
Muay Hardcore.
Muay Hardcore, where they're basically told in the rule set, if you go backwards, you will lose. No, they tell Thais this because they want to create this kind of like 3-round clashy fight that is kind of appreciated by Westerners. Westerners do well in those fights, do better in those fights, but also it's appreciated by the younger generation of Thais as well. Those that don't follow traditional Muay Thai, it's more kind of like charged, right? And Thais have a hard time often fighting in these formats. And I came up with this analogy which explained why Thais have such a hard time fighting. Which is, it's like staging a foot race where you tell the contestants that when you pass somebody, you cannot pull away from them. You cannot, like, once I'm 2 strides ahead of you, you cannot then burn out your lead to 10 strides and 20 strides. And the reason why you can't do that is it's more exciting if the race is close. So it would be like running, you pass your opponent, and then you like have to slow down to stay close to give the impression that there's a close fight, a close race, and then at the end, anyone can win. The reason why this analogy works, or the aspect of it that's informative, is that in Thailand, when you have the lead in a fight, like you've outscored your opponent in a scoring round, right? You've demonstrated superiority over them. The way you pull away, like how a runner would pull away, is by going backwards, by forcing your opponent to become more desperate to score, to be the aggressor. And this is a fundamental misunderstanding of Westerners, that we see that the aggressor is the dominator. But in Thailand, all their instincts are, like these girls who are fighting on these shows, these like forward-only shows, they literally do not understand how once I have the lead, I don't pull away. And they have to force themselves to continue to exchange after they've already taken the lead.
Right.
Did I say too many words?
No.
Okay. Is that the end of that topic?
What's your... do you
Okay,
have
I was
a
just
question,
setting the stage of explaining what backwards fighting means in Thailand.
Yeah. And when an audience sees someone going backwards, they're like, that person's in the lead.
Okay. Is that it?
No, what is your...
Well, we have a
must be
topic.
getting
Well,
to a point.
it's a discussion.
But what is the point? To educate people about why going backwards is useful in Thailand, or why it's so hard for Thai fighters to change this pattern and be in these 3-round fights, or?
I don't know, come up with something. Do you have a thought on it? We just watched Thai female fighters fight on these hardcore super champy fights. We were like, if the Thai fighter lost, but we were like, if that Thai fighter was allowed to pull away, they would have won. You're really changing, to me, you're really changing the fabric of Muay Thai.
Yes, and it's not just like, you can totally have a Thai fighter who's skilled go forward the whole time. You can do that. Like, you can have Tanon Chai just fucking, or, okay, here's a good example. You had Witcha going into this kind of like 3-round format, and he became a puncher and like a kind of really wicked fighter. He goes forward the whole time at like a pace that kind of feels a little bit still like traditional Muay Thai, even though there's no like, okay, come and get me kind of thing. There's an ethic that is so unspoken, that's how this going backwards is read, in this like, I have the lead, now you come and take it from me. I have the ball, now you come take it from me. And it'd be like if you're watching a sport where you don't know that the ball is what everyone's trying to get. And so you're like, that team's still running forward. And you're like, they don't have the ball. Like, it doesn't matter if they're running forward. They don't fucking have the ball kind of thing. But it's more subtle than that. It's the who has the stick that I wrote for 8 Limbs. That was about like, who has the lead in this game. It's like, if you think about something that's largely untaught, unspoken, but it's like how you view something, if you're watching a movie and there's like a very charismatic, kind of like attractive male lead who's like James Bondish, where he just kind of like is charming and women come to him, you're like, yeah, like he's very charismatic and powerful. If all of a sudden he was like mystery from the like negging, and he's like going around hitting on girls and like they're saying no to him, and he's like asking 20 of them, he's not charming, he's not James Bond anymore.
That's a very interesting analogy.
It's a different movie, it's a different character. It doesn't mean that
Totally.
character doesn't exist, doesn't mean that can't be a character that you're like, yeah, stoner party, awesome, I love this
But
character.
if you're like, no more charming characters, only dog characters
Right.
chasing women,
Right.
because that's only what's sexy,
Right.
you're fundamentally changing the fabric of what's sexy.
Yeah, and you're like, subtle womanizing is dead.
that's totally.
Single tear.
But this is an aesthetic, and your James Bond analogy is kind of interesting because Muay Thai is also a portrayal of hypermasculinity.
Right, and you're like, that's a man.
Like
going backwards, that's a man.
Yeah, like Samart or the great female fighters of the 90s, they were portraying a certain kind of masculinity that in the West confuses people. It's not confusing when you watch it, but if you're like, a lot of people are like, I don't understand how going backwards is fighting.
Right.
I don't know. There's another analogy that I use, which is, to me, this backwards fighting element is actually very much like real fighting, not real fighting like a video game, which isn't real, but people think is real, right? But real fighting in the world, it's like on a playground, if you get in a fight with somebody and you're like 12 years old and you hit them, and then they lunge at you and you retreat and they miss you, and then you laugh at them, and then you make them kind of like chase you. Who is winning that fight? Yeah. This is not a damage fight.
And like, how close is that fight?
And how close is that fight? And you have the kids surrounding the two of you, yelling and whatever, and they're all laughing at the guy who's like lunging at him. You understand that the meaning of a fight is not damage, but it's humiliation or domination in a social network.
It's submission fighting in a non-submission sport.
That's actually really fucking interesting and brutal.
Yeah.
So, I'm just suggesting, like, people like to think that the Thai backwards fighting thing as some kind of weird artifice that's detached from real fighting. But the fact is it actually is tapping into the deeper meanings of what fighting is, right? It's not just, I'm gonna take away your life points in a video game sense.
Yeah.
Although it can be like that. And then we also have to explain that in traditional Muay Thai, because there is this backwards fighting aesthetic, right? That when you have the lead, you're like, come and get me. They're also developed a counter style, which is often called, Muay Khao is very often like this, which is a class of fighters who do not back up. They become the complement to this backwards fighting style, which is, go ahead, run from me, I'm gonna catch you.
Yeah.
So it's not the case that all of Thai style is backwards oriented. There's actually a dialogue between these two styles that goes back to the Golden Age and far before, probably, but like Fighters of the Year in the 90s, you had Samart winning it as a backwards fighter, and then you had like Longsawan winning as a forward fighter.
Yeah.
But the forwardness...
Like Samson, who's like a shark.
Totally.
Cannot go
but
backwards.
The forwardness is in the context of what it means to go backwards.
Yeah.
And I feel like, yes,
600 meters. Keep right at the fork.
Right at the fork, it just looks like getting over. So
Just
stay in the right lane.
yeah.
Route 7. Okay, we're still running. We actually had a segment on an earlier Muay Thai Bones. Are these hybrid shows like Super Champ and Hardcore Max or whatever it is good for Thai female fighters? And we're like, yes. Earlier in our podcast, you were talking about Thai female fighters have maybe gone too far in the direction of point fighting, and we're like, these girls are really like challenged to fight in this like only go forward style, and we're like, it is probably good for these girls to toughen up and to learn how to throw in contest, right?
Right.
But we have to understand that we're also tugging at the fabric of Muay Thai itself when we make them do that. You agree with any of that?
I do. What I was saying about the like point fighting just doing barely enough sport version that is far more typical among female fighters than male fighters. Male fighters do it too. Is it kind of lacks the samadhi, the intention, the like, I'm going to get you to quit, or kind of when, I don't know, it just feels like there's not a lot at risk in it. When you make these female fighters who are used to the I have the lead, now I'm pulling away, when you make them stay in, very good example, Alicia from Brazil just fought Tanan Chinook of Thailand, who I've fought many times. She's been world champion WPMF for many years. She's stylistically one of the best
she's got beautiful Muay.
Female fighters. She's also very masculine in her aesthetic. She's not aggressive, but she's got this like, kind of like, anytime you take a picture of her, it's a perfect poster, like masculine performance thing to her.
These are female fighters, by the way.
But she lacks the I'm gonna take your heart that a male fighter exactly like her might have. And because she fought in this 3-round go forward format where the referee stopped the fight twice and was like, you have to come forward to her, like
Did
warning
she?
her.
I don't remember
twice.
And she looked so I think I remember she looked very distressed
when she had to actually stand in. And to be fair, it's not that she's a coward, it's not that she's not tough, like whatever the thing is, her entire system is based on this timing distance going backwards. That's the direction she goes in. She pulls her opponent this way.
Well, she doesn't just do that, then she'll capture the round with a beautiful offensive moment in the round, take the points and then resume that like
Sure,
continual
but
backward
her
thing.
entire house is built on this foundation of these directions.
Yes.
And you're like, no, now the river goes in that direction. Do the same thing you've done. And you're
Yeah.
like, it doesn't go in that direction. Everything's backwards. Everything's
Yeah.
different. So when she had to stand in,
Yes.
none of what she knows how to do, none of her body mapping, none of her strategy works
Yeah.
in that coming forward or staying in all the time.
Yeah.
And she completely fell apart. And it was
Yeah.
like, it was difficult because she was so defeated by getting hit like that.
I mean,
and
but to credit to Alicia,
Alicia,
Insta Helen,
yeah,
she fucking put it on her. Like, you have got to crumble the house.
100%.
Right, yeah.
And we've seen Alicia lose to Tananchinook in Tananchinook's rule set, which is chase, can't catch
And she
her,
also,
like always
but she
follow.
also beat her in her rule set also.
Yes.
Yeah.
Point being, bring the fight to where you're comfortable.
Yes.
And who's better at doing that?
But the rules in this format, and Tananchinook was stressed by even fighting in the format, right? Before the fight, she talked about how she's not comfortable
She
in
was
these.
upset about the gloves because it was hardcore, so it was the MMA gloves.
So it's a really difficult thing because Tananchinook's a beautiful fighter. You put her in a rule set that is taking away a certain kind of like fabric of what her fighting is, and you end up with this interesting result. Another fight on that card, I don't know if it was that card, I don't even know the Thai girl's name. She fought a Team Quest girl, the blonde girl, Maria.
Yeah, I can't remember what the Thai girls.
Yeah. Had a spectacular first round. These are only 3-round fights. Had a spectacular first round. Like, it was pretty beautiful Muay Thai.
It's like a mini sousing.
Oh, it was
Fucking awesome.
really beautiful. If that was a Thai style fight, she would have just disappeared. Like, she would have gone backwards and made Maria chase her, and she would never have caught her, probably.
She's like, I've got the ball.
Yeah.
Now I protect the ball.
Now I protect the ball.
And you're like, no, the game is to constantly keep putting the ball in the middle.
Yeah, and so she was forced to stay forward and in on Maria, and Maria actually ended up cutting her up all over the place with elbows.
Yeah.
And it was a beautiful performance by Maria given the rule set, but it was clear, I think, from just watching how it was, that the Thai girl had a great problem not being able to pull away from that fight, in that fight. Like, it's like the runner being told, now that you have the lead, you can't blow it out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm really divided on what's healthy or awesome for Muay Thai. Like, these were exciting fights, and it's good to have these Thai girls get more toughened up, but you're really pulling on the fabric of what Muay Thai is. And I've brought this up several times. I probably have a forum post on it on the roundtable. The earliest historical record of a Thai fighting a Westerner is from the 1700s. It tells the story of two French brothers who had come to the royal court of Thailand and challenged the court to a fight. Basically, bring your champion. And the king brought out his Muay Thai instructor, champion fellow, and one of the brothers, they had a fight. And it's so interesting, because the first thing that starts happening is the Thai will not stand in. He just is striking him as he goes backwards. He's fighting backwards. And some of the greatest boxers in the world fought backwards. Like, it's not like Thais invented fighting backwards. Being able to strike on the retreat is supposedly something Muhammad Ali was incredible at. To strike with power and accuracy. Being able to fight backwards is a really high level of fighting. This shows that what ended up happening in that historical account, I'll try to link it in the description, was that the Frenchman got so incensed that he was being mocked and dishonored, and that the Thai would not stand and attack him directly, that his brother leaped in, and both Frenchmen attacked the Thai.
And both lost.
Well, then other Thais jumped in, and so at least by this one record, they got the shit beat out of them and carried to their ship.
The Frenchman got
The
beat.
Frenchman, yeah. So what I'm saying is this, in this inclination to fight backwards to show superiority is actually woven into Thai culture over 200 years, probably 300 or 400 years, and that the misunderstanding of that backwards fighting by a Westerner has been there from the very beginning. Like even this very first Thai fight, right? This very first fight between a Westerner and a Thai. I don't know, you find that interesting at all? I'm returned to that historical account over and over.
Okay. Yeah, it's a thing of like not knowing how the game is played. Like you don't know how it scores or something. Like
Yeah, and what's interesting about it also is that if you have opponents who have a different set of rules, it's impossible to know which one's better, because one opponent will just allow certain kinds of actions because they think they don't score high. Right? What, you okay?
Yep.
And the other opponent will allow other kinds of other kinds of actions. Like for instance, a Thai fighter might allow punches to land because they're not high scoring.
Yeah.
And the Westerner is like, I'm landing all my punches.
We've
And then he's
seen
like,
some
What?
fighters who just block with their face because the punches don't matter. So it's like, I'll take all of those.
for real?
And then I won't name them because I don't want to shit talk, but
You're talking about Thais or Westerners?
Thais. Like I'll just fucking block with my face because those are not scoring, and then they get the knees and the kicks underneath, and then the Westerner is like, I hit them 800 times. Why did I lose this fight? And you're like, because you were just punching.
Totally. Okay. I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, rolling. This is the last segment of this slightly abbreviated Muay Thai Bones. Is still probably pretty epic when we add up all the minutes we've gone. During the little battery break, I was asking, what do you think would be good to talk about? And you were like, burnout. And I was like, wow, that actually sounds like a great topic, but I don't even know fully what you mean by it. So, I mean, everybody knows what burnout is, but you should really know. You've been fighting and training at an unbelievable level for 7 years in Thailand like nobody else before.
Yeah, I guess if you're going to give like a brief definition of burnout, it's the I stopped going to training because I just can't. Like I'm too tired. You're not motivated. You don't enjoy it anymore. You're just constantly like dragging ass, and you decide that you're like I don't want to do it anymore. The thing about burnout that people, I think, with less experience make the mistake of believing, and it's just naivety, is that burnout is this final state that you, one, can avoid, cannot. Two, that it's like there's either burnout or not. It's cyclical. You burn out fucking so many times. I've burned out so many times.
Yeah.
And you just work on it, get whatever the thing is, rest if you need to rest, work through it if you need to work through it, whatever. It is not a like...
It's not a ultimate state.
Burnout is not divorce from your sport. Like,
Yeah.
you go through rough patches, and burnout is part of it.
It's really interesting.
I think why it's relevant is that I watch people. I've been at my gym for 5 years. People come and go who stay for a week, stay for a month, stay for a year, whatever. Like, you see a lot when you stay in one spot. You get to like observe a lot. There's someone who came to my gym very enthusiastic, wanting to stay for a year or more, like just super amped, always talking about really wanting to get good in the clinch, wanting to learn the language, like all of these things that are very enthusiastic. That's motivation, right? Motivation's great when you have it. When you don't have it, you feel like there's something wrong, and it's really hard to work under those circumstances. I remember reading a quote once from a painter, I think, who said, motivation is for amateurs. The rest of us just show up to work. And it's like, I'm not motivated all the time. There are days that I'm like, I do not
More than days.
want to be
right?
doing this.
Yeah.
Like, it sucks. And so the like naive, inexperienced person coming wanting all these things to just constantly improve and fall into place, and like, I really want to get good at the clinch and the language, so I'm going to be speaking Thai in a month and good at clinch in a month, does not work that way. I'm seeing people at my gym burn out, and it's rough. Like, you come and the smile's gone, the fun is gone, the joy is gone. You're still there, you're still putting in the work, that's great, but you can see this burnout happening. I think, and I've talked about this in real time in my career in terms of why it was important for me to be training the way that I was training, why I'm back at the gym the next day, why I hate days off, why I do active rest on my resting days, all these things. I am not a believer in overtraining.
Meaning by you don't believe there is such a thing. That it could be interpreted as saying you are a believer. Like, I don't believe.
The things that people identify as symptoms of overtraining exist. You are experiencing those things. That is real. It is not from physically overtraining.
In many, many cases,
in my
maybe.
mind.
Yeah, okay.
Overtraining in terms of like scientific, lactic, fucking whatever exists, you're not doing it. Like these,
Probably, yeah.
You're not getting close.
Yeah.
Like hitting the gym 5 days a week. It's not happening. Where those kinds of overtraining that people have done scientific studies on are like cyclists doing the Tour de Force, or like Marines. Like, these are fucking far beyond. I don't think I've ever overtrained, and I trained really hard.
Though you are experiencing real symptoms, they might be coming from other things.
I believe they're coming
like,
from under resting. You're not mentally taking care of yourself. On days that you're resting, you're not actually resting. You're like playing video games or like whatever the thing is.
Or simple things like depletion of electrolytes. You can experience some depression. You can experience extreme fatigue. If you have no potassium,
It's rough.
you can be in a really bad
It's
state.
so bad.
And if you're training hard, you could think it's because you've been training so hard, right? So,
Right, and you don't have the experience to know that 50 kicks just by itself is not some threshold that you can't surpass. It's 50 kicks under all these other circumstances. That if you took care of all this stuff, you could do 200 kicks. It would not be a problem. But burnout's real. Burnout happens. I've burned out many times. I'm watching people in my gym burn out. But what I was saying is that early in my career, in real time, I was talking about how hard I train, why I train that like that. And we've started focusing more on my rest and recovery
Totally.
at this point in my career. I still think it is super important for people at the front end of their training in Thailand. Fucking burn out. Like, do it. Many, many, many times. Don't like wait in and like, oh, if you're not feeling good, stay home, blah, blah, blah. Sure, everyone needs rest days. I'm not like, never take a rest day, never listen to your body, whatever the thing is. But when you make that decision, you make it in the context of how hard you want to keep pushing.
Well, there's another interesting thing that I intuit, and just mostly from your own experience, but guessing about others, is because you say burnout is part of the landscape. It's part of the cycle. There's nothing wrong. Like, you are going to hit red line.
Yeah.
Mentally, physically.
Many times.
And it's kind of like, just like the harvest, the plant harvest, let the land lay fallow. Like, it's part of the circle of training. One of the things I suspect is that when people hit burnout and they think, oh, there's something wrong, then they pull back, and they pull back. And because burnout is actually part of the cycle, when you pull back, you're going to hit burnout again, but at a lower threshold. It will still come.
Yeah.
And then you pull back again, and this is very often what happens when people just keep pulling back, and then pretty soon they're not even really doing it anymore.
Yeah, I mean,
because they're losing inspiration, right?
Right.
cyclically.
Right. And it's like the 50 kicks made me tired, so I took 2 days off, and then when I came back, 20 made me tired.
Yeah.
I must have come back too early. It's like,
Maybe.
no, those 2 days off is why you can't do 50 now.
Yeah.
But actually what made me think of this topic, we went and talked to the promoter, head of the northern chapter of Muay Siam, Kaensak, who is a huge proponent of female fighters. He's really a huge, important figure for female fighting in Thailand. We went and talked to him about some things that we need to talk to him about, and I was asking him about why the class of women that I was fighting 3 months ago, a lot of them aren't fighting right now. Like, a lot of them have kind of retired. Thai female fighters retire really early, like 16 to 20 kind of thing. You're like done. And he and my corner Dang both said that when Thai people get jobs, they stop fighting, really. Because like time
Because
and
they can't
focus-
support themselves as fighters.
Right.
Right.
Cobb added, and he not only is a promoter, but he also is a trainer at a gym, so he is very close to these fighters. He said that a problem was that they were fighting too much, that there were too many promotions all around, and so they would fight too frequently, and this makes them not train. So if you fight a lot, you don't train. The problem is not the fighting. The problem is that because you fought, you're like, now I need a break. Because the cycle for most people, not Sylvie, most people, including Thai fighters, is you fight and you take a break and then you like start over again. And he's like, they're fighting a lot and so they take a break and then they just burn out. Like, that's burnout. For like, I don't want to do this anymore. We've seen this with the Patong Pung fighters who fought so much.
They would fight 50 times in a year, maybe.
So much.
Yeah.
And then they're like, okay, I'm tired from my fights, so I'm not going to go to training because I have another fight coming.
Yeah.
And so they're hanging out, they're getting their girlfriends, they're just like getting fat. All of these things that are burnout, not having to do with how much the fighting is. It's not recovering for the fight, although thinking that you're recovering for the fight by not going to training, rather than like, I need calluses to be able to recover.
This is one of the secrets of what you've done is that, and we've adopted a different attitude towards rest now 7 years in, but you're like, fighting does not stop me from training. Like, you dive right back into training as if the fighting is part of training.
Because they're one thing.
But
And so what Cobb actually recommended, because we were talking about something else, he was saying that these tournaments, like marathon style tournaments, which means it's a tournament that takes place over 6 months or a year rather than like a one-night event or like a two-night event or something, that keeps people on a consistent training. They have to keep their weight in check. They have to keep coming to training and stay strong. Like, basically, instead of having 2 fight camps, fucking whatever, you're like blending this long-term event into a steady, cyclical, okay, you cycle down, you cycle up, you cycle down, you cycle up kind of thing, that this is how you avoid the burnout, quit, disappear, retire thing.
Okay, I'm feeling a little bit lost on this because you're talking about the Thai situation, which isn't like Westerners.
It is like
Apparently,
Westerners.
like, obviously.
The person who came to my gym who wants to stay for a year and thinks they're just going to be motivated for a year, learn clinch in a month and Thai in a month, and everything's going to be exciting every day, and you're just going to keep getting better. That doesn't happen. It's not a reality. It's a total fairy tale. You have to, when you're like, I'm going to be here for a year, pattern out the, I'm in this tournament for 6 months. So where do I rest? Where do I check my weight? Where do I get my fights to stay tuned up, blah, blah, blah. It's a long-term plan. A long-term plan is not, I'm going to be here a year. That's not even a plan. That's how you apply for a visa. It's not a real plan. My plan is, I want to fight as much as possible for as long as possible.
Yeah.
So I've got this like probably 15, 20 year plan that's like, this is going to include injury, burnout, not feeling well, not wanting to fight, not being motivated, having great days, having times that I don't grow. All of that is built into it.
Long periods of not growing, which is really mentally difficult.
Oh, it
You
sucks.
feel like you plateau
It
and you
sucks.
will never get out of it.
I honestly would rather be physically injured than the like, I'm not getting better that just fucking kills you, like destroys you.
I'd also say that one of the secrets of how you achieved what you've done is we took an approach to rest early on. There were a couple approaches. One was if you're gonna take a day off, you decide the night before.
Yeah.
You don't get in the habit of waking up and being like, should I go?
See how I feel when I wake up.
Yeah, you don't want to get in the habit of thinking that your training is up for grabs when you wake up. When you wake up, you know you're going, or you've decided in advance. When put that way, you actually took very few days off.
Yep.
It also makes you commit to what rest is. Like when the night before, you're like, I do think it's good to take a day off. And then we'd be like, well, in taking that day off, what are you gonna do? Like, you're not gonna scroll on the phone all day. You're gonna be like, go to the sauna, get a massage. I don't know, there's so many active rest type things. Do yoga. Sometimes it involves sleeping, but that usually involves you being sick, right? The other thing, complementary thing which happened more often, which would be like, do not stay home. If you feel burned out, go to the gym and just shadowbox, or do something very light. Like understanding that you can have positive experiences even when burning out in the space of the gym is really important, because you want that gym. Why are you laughing so much?
I'm remembering a comic or meme, I don't know what you would classify it as, that's talking about how crazy medical practice was back in the day. And it's this guy saying, you have ghosts in your blood and I think you should do cocaine about it. Is that like people think burnout is physical. To me, that's like saying you have ghosts in your blood. Like, burnout is never physical. Burnout is all mental. So if you're like, I'm going to stay home because I'm feeling burnt out, it's your brain. Like, if you can stay home and mentally be cool about resting, I don't think those two things go together for the kind of person I am.
Right.
I'm like, go to the gym, take it down. Like, just move around, just shadow box, just feel good about being in the space. Like, I like being here.
Yeah.
You don't have to do anything. Like, you don't have to fucking like do the burn or whatever the thing is that's like you feel physically tired. Take care of yourself mentally, because it's not really ghosts in your blood. So don't do cocaine about it. Like, it's in your brain kind of thing. That like sometimes it really is physical and there are ways to deal with that, and sometimes it's mental, but when it's mental, you really fucking have to address that part of it. You can get away with not fully addressing the physical part because the brain is so much stronger. You can physically be done and mentally address that and keep going. If you're mentally done and you try to address it physically, you're just doing cocaine about it and you're getting worse and worse. Like, you cannot physically address a mental problem. It doesn't work.
And I think that is, what was it? Thus I've spoken, or what is that?
I have spoken.
I have spoken.
This is the way.
This is the way. This is the way. Okay, thanks for being with us in this Muay Thai Bones podcast. If you're not a patron and you're watching this on YouTube, become a patron, support the podcast, and Sylvie's fighting in this awesome content. You can get it as a podcast, audio podcast subscription if you're a patron, even for $1. Thank you to Sylvie's sponsors, Onyx MMA and Loblo, who are your official sponsors. And what else can we say? I guess we'll sit Sylvie out.
Sylvie out.
Cue music.